Right now, inside your body, billions of cells are being quietly replaced. You will not feel a single one of them go. The skin on your hands is about a month old. The lining of your stomach is younger than your last haircut. In a very literal sense, you are a copy of a copy of a copy of the person you were 10 years ago. So why does a body that already knows how to rebuild itself ever stop? That is not a poetic question, it is a biological one. And for the last 40 years, a small group of scientists has been quietly closing in on the answer. But before we get there, I want you to do something. Stop, actually picture it. Tomorrow morning you wake up and it is done. Solved. Not a serum in a jar, not a scam, not a headline. Real, your cells stop keeping score. You are not going to age. You are not going to die of old age, ever. What is the first thing you do? Do not answer quickly. Most people say travel. Some say they would learn every language on Earth. A few say they would finally call someone back. Now go further out. What do you do in year 50, year 300, year 4000 when every person who ever knew your face is gone and the language you grew up speaking is something academics argue about in footnotes? I genuinely want to know. Put your answer in the comments below. And tell me where you are watching from, your country, your city, whatever you feel like sharing. I ask because I think the answer shifts depending on where you are standing. Someone watching this in Manila might answer differently than someone in Warsaw or Sao Paulo or Lagos or a small town where 4 generations of one family live on the same street. Different histories, different relationships with time, different ideas about what a long life is even for. Because here is what almost nobody realizes about this question. Living forever is not the strange part. Dying is. Death by old age is not a law of the universe, it is not thermodynamics, it is not required. We know that because some animals simply do not do it. In 1998, a biologist named Daniel Martinez ran an experiment that was supposed to be boring. He took hydra, tiny freshwater animals a few millimeters long, and he watched them. For 4 years, he was waiting for the moment they started to decline. Slower movement, reduced fertility, the ordinary machinery of getting old. It never came. The 4-year-old hydra were reproducing exactly as well as the 4-week-old hydra. Their risk of dying did not climb with age. They were not immune to being eaten or starved or crushed. They were simply not scheduled to fall apart. Then there is Turritopsis doornii, a jellyfish about the size of your fingernail. Under stress, it does something that reads like a typo in a textbook. It reverts. Its adult cells transform back into an earlier stage of development and the animal starts over, in principle, indefinitely. And you do not even need the ocean for this. Look at the naked mole rat. Rochelle Buffenstein has studied these animals for decades, and her data broke a rule biologists thought was universal. Their risk of death does not rise as they age. A 30-year-old naked mole rat is, statistically, no closer to dying than a 2-year-old one. So if a jellyfish worked it out and a wrinkled rodent the size of your palm worked it out, what exactly is stopping you? The first real clue arrived in 1961. Leonard Hayflick was growing human cells in a lab. Everyone at the time assumed cells in a dish would divide forever as long as you fed them. Hayflick found that they did not. They divided somewhere between 40 and 60 times and then they stopped. Permanently, they did not die, they just refused to continue. That ceiling now carries his name, the Hayflick limit. Why does it exist? Elizabeth Blackburn found the mechanism. At the end of every one of your chromosomes sits a protective cap called a telomere. Every time a cell divides, that cap gets a little shorter. It is a countdown physically written into you. Blackburn shared the Nobel Prize in 2009 with Carol Grader and Jack Szostak for that work, including the discovery of telomerase, the enzyme that can rebuild those caps. Now here is the uncomfortable part. Your body already knows how to make telomerase, it mostly keeps it switched off. And the cells that switch it back on and start dividing without any limit at all, we already have a word for those. Tumors. Cancer is, in a sense, a cell that achieved immortality at the expense of the creature it lives inside. Sit with that for a second. But telomeres are only one thread. In 1993, Cynthia Kenyon at the University of California, San Francisco, altered a single gene in a roundworm, one gene called DAF2. The worms lived twice as long, not sicker for longer, healthy for longer. young by every measure she could find. One gene, double the lifespan. It has only accelerated since. Steve Horvath built what is now called an epigenetic clock, which can read your biological age off the chemical marks on your DNA, sometimes more honestly than your birth certificate can. Shinya Manaka won a Nobel for showing that an adult cell can be reprogrammed back into a young, unspecialized state. Labs are now testing partial versions of that reset inside living animals. Mice with restored vision. Mice with tissue that behaves years younger than it should. Aging is starting to look less like a curse and more like software. And software can be patched. So let us say they finish it, let us say it works. What actually happens next? Start with arithmetic, because arithmetic is where every fantasy meets the wall. Around 60 million people die each year. Take that number out of the equation, keep births anywhere near where they are now, and the population does not simply grow, it compounds. There is no plateau, there is no ceiling that arrives politely and asks everyone to stop. So something has to give. Either people stop being born or the planet stops holding. Think about what a world without new births actually looks like. No children. No classrooms. Nobody arriving who has never heard the old arguments and asks the obvious question nobody thought to ask. The oldest civilization on Earth permanently with no one new to disagree with it. The physicist Max Planck once observed that science does not usually advance by convincing its opponents. It advances because the opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up with the new idea as ordinary. That is not cynicism, that is the mechanism. Progress has been running on funerals this whole time. Now take the funerals away. Who holds power in that world? The people holding it right now, forever. Every strongman, every board seat, every fortune, every landlord compounding quietly with no inheritance, no succession, no end. Wealth does not disperse in that world. It pools in the same hands for 1,000 years. And would immortality be shared evenly? Be honest with yourself, has anything else been? The likeliest version of this story is not humanity ascending together. It is a small permanent class that does not die and everyone else doing what everyone else has always done. Then there is the part almost nobody plans for. Your mind. You are not built to carry 1,000 years. Your memory is not a hard drive, it is reconstructive. Every time you recall something, you rebuild it slightly differently and save the new version over the old one. Elizabeth Loftus spent a career showing how easily that process can be edited and how confidently people remember things that never happened at all. So who are you at year 800? You would not remember your childhood. You would remember remembering it, a story about a story about a story, 1,000 copies down. The philosopher Bernard Williams wrote about exactly this in 1973. He argued that a life without an ending would eventually hollow itself out, not because the world runs out of things to do, but because you run out of the wanting. Desire depends on being the kind of creature that has limited time. Remove the limit and eventually nothing is urgent, nothing gets chosen over anything else, and the self that had preferences quietly dissolves. He called it tedium. The word sounds mild, it is not. So ask yourself, how much of what you love do you love partly because you could lose it? This is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. In 1973, the anthropologist Ernest Becker argued that the fear of death is the hidden engine underneath almost everything humans have ever built. Cathedrals, empires, books, children, art, all of it, he said, an attempt to leave behind something that outlasts the body. 3 psychologists, Jeff Greenberg, Sheldon Solomon, and Tom Piszczynski, took that idea into the laboratory and tested it. Hundreds of experiments later, the pattern holds. Remind people quietly of their own mortality and their behavior shifts. They hold their beliefs tighter, they defend their groups harder, they reach for meaning. Death is not the thing that interrupts your life. Death is the pressure that shapes it. Every deadline you have ever met, you met because of a limit. Every goodbye that mattered because it might have been the last one. Tonight is worth something precisely because there is not an unlimited supply of tonights. Immortality does not give you more life, it gives you the same life with the price tag removed. So would you take it? Not the fantasy version, the real one. The one where the world calcifies and the powerful never let go and your own memories wear thin and everything that felt urgent slowly becomes optional. Some of you will still say yes, and honestly, I understand that. Because for most people, this question was never really about wanting to live forever. It was about not wanting to lose someone. That is a completely different wish, and it is a far more human one. The research is not slowing down. Kenyan's worms, Horvath's clocks, Yamanaka's reset. None of that stopped. Somewhere tonight in a lab, someone is quietly shortening the distance between you and this question. You may not get to answer it as a thought experiment, you may get to answer it as a decision. So think about it carefully before you do. Right now, inside your body, billions of cells are being quietly replaced. And every one of them is running a countdown that nobody has managed to switch off. That countdown is not a flaw in you. It is the only reason anything you do today counts.